There's something strange going on around here.
Where?
Well, you know, it's like weird.
Well, that's silly, Magnolia. It's a beautiful day. Prettiest day we've had all year.
Well, doesn't it seem quiet to you?
Sure. But that's nice. I like it.
Hello. Cat got your tongue?
Say something. Say anything.
They can't talk. They just can't talk.
But we can. They can't talk. But we can.
That's weird.
You never heard of the Great Silence? Why, I thought everybody knew about the Great Silence. But then, I suppose some of you weren't even born when it all happened. Actually, it happened on a bright, sunny Tuesday morning. Things were going along just about as usual. People were rushing off to work. Kids were going to school. Mothers were doing their shopping. Some folks were taking off on vacation. Everybody was busy running about doing all the things people do. You might say it was one of your regular Tuesday mornings. And then it happened. The human beings were the first to know about it, of course. But we animals didn't notice anything wrong until the next day. Then Calvin the Crow ran across the whole story in the newspaper.
Oh, hi, Albert. Hey, listen, I ran across this newspaper while chasing a bug and saw this headline, see? So I come back here and I read the whole story. Gee, Great Silence falls on world. Humans lose speech. You ought to read the rest of it. Well, I will if you'll just give me a little room there. It says, an international state of emergency was declared today by the heads of all the nations of the world as human beings lost the power to speak Tuesday morning. How about that? They said that some people wanted to turn things over to us animals because we can talk, but that was voted down in the United Nations. They said we weren't qualified.
Who said we weren't qualified?
Human beings, of course. Who else?
And slowly, the world began to run down like a big clock. Business ground almost to a halt, for a businessman without his telephone is like a bird without wings. The only way folks could talk to each other was by writing notes and letters. The post office people did their best under the terrible load. But after about 3 days, they all quit and quietly went on strike. The children weren't having any fun either. Where's the joy in playing with your friends if you can't yell and holler a little bit? It's no fun at all. Of course, the airplanes couldn't fly because the pilots had no way of talking to the control tower. And there was very little gasoline because it was almost impossible to get an order delivered. So there were fewer and fewer cars on the streets. And people were getting into more and more fights because they couldn't say things like, excuse me, or I'm sorry, or I beg your pardon, or anything. They did a lot of hitting. As the weeks wore on, the newspapers reported that fewer and fewer people were getting married because they couldn't say things like, I love you, or will you marry me? Of course, they could have written it down on paper, but boys are shy about putting such sentiments in writing. People tried to cheer themselves up by doing such things as going to a baseball game, but it was so unearthly quiet, It kind of took the kick out of it. And since we animals were the only ones who could talk, we decided it was up to us to do something.
Listen, we gotta do something.
Oh, well, yes, but what?
Well, first of all, we've got to find out what caused people to stop talking in the first place.
Oh, they have every scientist in the world working on it, but they can't find a thing, not one thing.
Well, maybe it had something to do with the planets or the moon or the sun or something like that.
Oh, they checked that. Everything's in order.
Listen, we're not going to find the answer around here. Let's hit the road and see what we can turn up, okay?
But we're supposed to stay in the zoo.
All rules are off. This is an international emergency. Come on. Hey, wait for me!
So Jeffrey and Magnolia started off on their adventure, but they couldn't get very far without some means of transportation. Since there were no taxicabs or buses, he suggested they borrow the zoo director's car. Magnolia had her doubts, but she knew not to argue with Jeffrey when he seemed so determined. There was still the question of where to go.
Where do you think we should go?
I haven't the slightest idea. How about going to Washington, D.C.? That's where the Congress is and the president and everybody. Excellent idea. I'll fly on ahead and meet you there.
And so away they went, off to find out how to get people talking with each other again. But before long, they ran out of gas.
We're out of gas.
Oh, dear. Where can we get some?
Well, I'm afraid that's impossible. There's almost no gasoline to be had anywhere.
Well, what are we going...
At last they came to a little railroad station.
Do you suppose there are still trains anymore?
I read in the newspaper that most aren't running in order to save fuel.
Oh, dear. I don't think I can take another step.
Wait a minute. Look there, Magnolia. Look down the tracks.
As luck would have it, a small train came along. It had only 2 cars and didn't use much power. So Magnolia and Jeffrey got on and started off for Washington, D.C. Finally, they arrived at the nation's capital.
Excuse me, sir. I wondered if you would be good enough to direct me to the Congress of the United States. You know, the Capitol building where Congress meets. Oh, I just keep going down that way. Is that it? Now, I go to the left? I don't go to the left. I do, but I don't. I don't understand. Oh, I see. I go down 3 blocks. You go down 3 blocks and then turn to the right? I don't. How about that? No, I go 2. Is that, you mean I go 2 blocks down? I don't turn left. How about 2 blocks down and... well, don't get yourself worked up, sir. We'll find it somehow. Thank you anyway. Wow.
Well, they didn't try that again, even though they passed many people in their search for the Capitol. In spite of getting completely lost in the maze of Washington streets, Jeffrey and Magnolia couldn't help being impressed by all the famous buildings. First, they found the White House. Another wrong turn took them to the Jefferson Memorial. It made them feel very patriotic. But when they reached the Lincoln Memorial, they were becoming very confused. Finally, they spotted a landmark, the Washington Monument, and knew they must be close to the Capitol. If some people thought it was strange seeing a giraffe and an ostrich walking down the street, they didn't say anything. After all, they couldn't. Not far from the Washington Monument, Jeffrey and Magnolia met Calvin.
Where were you, Calvin? We've been looking all over for you. I stopped off at the Department of Agriculture. They got millions of bushels of surplus corn over there, and I've been walking around in it in my bare feet.
Well, do you know where the Capitol building is? Nobody can tell us.
Oh, sure. I saw it from the air. It's 3 blocks down, 3 to the left, and 3 to the right.
And so they all went to see their congressman. But since no human beings could talk, the congressman had nothing to say. It is very sad when a congressman has nothing to say, and very unusual. They decided to take the matter directly to the people and wandered about the streets for days and days asking questions. But of course, since no human beings had the power of speech anymore, they couldn't answer back. They just stood there. Some people took to writing their remarks on paper, but it wasn't much help. It was discouraging work, and more than once they thought about giving the whole thing up and going back to their comfortable zoo. But they didn't. They only thought about it. Oh, by the by, did you notice that funny old man with the beard hobbling along on his cane? You wouldn't think an old man like that would have anything to do with the story, now would you? Well, maybe he does, and maybe he doesn't. I'm not saying just yet. In the meantime, you keep a sharp eye on that old man. Well, here we are again. Now then, let's get on with the story of the great silence when people stopped talking. Things went from bad to worse, and from worse to well-nigh impossible. As the world continued to run down, things got quieter and quieter. The streets were almost empty of cars and trucks because gasoline was so hard to come by. Without transportation, there wasn't much food in the stores, don't you know? Hardly anyone was going anywhere. Most folks just stayed at home. People stopped seeing each other. What's the good of a visit if nobody can say anything? Soon, even the children forgot how to play. Being animals, of course, Jeffrey and Magnolia could always find something to eat and a place to rest. But they were getting discouraged, too.
Oh, dear.
What's the matter?
I'm discouraged.
Well, I know how you feel. So am I.
There's just only one other place we can go.
Where's that?
What, the White House?
You mean go see the president?
Well, why not? We're citizens, aren't we?
Well, I don't know. Now that you mention it, I really don't know.
We have a right to see him.
Well, what would you say if you did see him?
Well, I'd volunteer our services.
What services?
Well, I don't know.
Well, then what's the use in seeing him?
Well, maybe he'll think of something. Well, do you have any better idea?
No.
Well, then, let's go.
Hey, gang, where are you going?
We're going to see the president.
Oh, isn't that nice? Later this afternoon, I thought I might drop in on the Queen for a spot of tea. Well, she's serious, Calvin. We're going to try to see the president. What for?
To volunteer our services.
What services? Well, we don't exactly know yet.
Well, we thought the president could think of something.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world, but I think the situation's impossible.
Impossible or not, we're going to try.
You bet. Come on, Magnolia. Well, Eddie O'Corn in there, kids. That's the way I like to hear you talk. Eddie O'Corn. They don't stand a chance.
Before going to see the president, Magnolia and Jeffrey decided to stop in the park across from the White House in order to get up their nerve. Jeffrey said it would take him about an hour to get up his nerve, but Magnolia allowed us how it would take her. More like an hour and a half.
I'll figure I'll be ready about 2:30.
Oh, take your time.
Oh, we mustn't get discouraged. I always say that if you hold good thoughts, good things will come out of it.
Balderdash.
I beg your pardon?
I didn't say anything.
Well, I thought you said balderdash.
I never say balderdash.
Well, anyway, as I was saying, if you fix your mind on pleasant things will happen to you.
Fiddle-dee-dee.
Did you say fiddle-dee-dee?
I say, look there, Magnolia, a bitterberry bush. Why, I haven't seen a bitterberry bush in years. I think I'll go over and have a nibble. Excuse me, please.
I was certain that I heard someone say fiddle-dee-dee.
It was then that Magnolia saw the funny old man. She went over to him.
I beg your pardon, sir, but did I hear you say fiddle-dee-dee?
What? What's that?
Did I hear you say balderdash and fiddle-dee-dee?
Well, how should I know that? You're the best judge of that. How in tarnation can I know what you hear?
Well, I mean, did you say balderdash and fiddle-dee-dee?
I did.
Well, why did you say that?
Because what you were saying was nonsense. So I said balderdash and fiddle-dee-dee.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. You're a human being and you're talking.
I'm talking, but I'm no human being.
Well, of course you are.
Well, don't you think I should be the best judge of that?
But you look like a human being.
Well, what's that got to do with it? Some people look low-down mean, and they're nice. And some people who look nice are really low-down mean.
Well, if you're not a human being, what are you?
I'm a genie.
A genie?
Don't you know what a genie is?
Well, I have a girlfriend named Jeannie.
Oh, not that kind
She's a
of...
peacock.
Well, not that kind of genie. I'm a magic genie. We used to come in bottles. And magic lamps and things like that.
You don't look like a genie.
You always go by looks, don't you? You know, you animals are getting to talk just as silly as human beings used to.
Well, if you're magic, do you know why human beings can't talk anymore?
Of course. I stopped them.
You did.
I did. Couldn't stand it anymore. Got sick and tired of all the silly things people said. And all the lies they told each other. And all that noise. So I took some of my last piffle dust and I put a magic spell on them and shut them all up.
Oh,
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's been so nice and peaceful and quiet around here till you came along.
Mr. Genie, please, you've got to take back your magic spell.
Now, why should I do a silly thing like that?
Because the whole world's in a mess, that's why.
It was in a mess before.
I know, but it's worse now. People are near starving. I know you're right when you say people say silly things and tell lies and all that. But it's not the talking that does it. It's what they're thinking that's wrong.
Well, at last you said something sensible.
Well, what I mean is, people can tell lies by not saying anything at all.
Yeah, I know. When something's wrong, lots of folks just sit by and they won't say a thing. That's what you call your silent lie, you know.
Oh, please, Mr. Genie, let people talk. They've got to talk with each other. If they don't, it'll be just the end of the world. You've got to believe in them.
What's there to believe in anymore?
Well, I believe in you.
You do?
You said genies can't live unless people believe in them. Well, I believe in you.
I don't believe you really believe in me.
If you took away the spell so people could talk again, I'd have to believe in you. Now, wouldn't I? Well, wouldn't I?
I hate to start up all that noise again.
Oh, I know, but it's the only way.
I don't even know if I have enough piffle dust left.
Well, where is it?
In my cane, of course.
Well, try it anyway. Look and see.
Well, there may be enough to do the trick, and there may not.
Oh, please try it, Mr. Genie. Do it for the children anyway. Do it for them.
Well, I hope I don't live to regret this. You stand way back now. Way back.
And the old genie did it. He changed the world back to the way it was before. And people talked for 7 days and 7 nights to make up for all the things left unsaid. And before any time at all, things were back to normal. People were rushing off to work. Kids were gone to school. Mothers were doing their shopping. Folks were going on vacation. And people were running about doing all the things people do. And to make up for all the fun missed in the year of the Great Silence, the United Nations declared an international holiday. They called the holiday International Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, Independence, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Laughing, Singing, and Talking Day. And they declared another holiday, too, one that would be observed each year to commemorate the terrible time of the Great Silence. It was to be called the Day of Silence. And on this day, no one would be allowed to say a word. It was to be a time in which everyone would sit down and think real hard before opening his mouth the next day. There's one thing I really ought to tell you. Parts of this story weren't really true, strictly speaking. But the main part was, the part that said, if people ever stop talking to each other, look out. Look out.